So good morning everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Select Committee of Tynwald on the role of the Legislature in the budget process. I'm Dr. Alex Allinson, Chair of the committee, and with me are Juan Watson, SHK, Dawn Kinnish, MLC, Chris Thomas, MHK, and David Ashford, MHK. The committee was established in December 2024 to examine the role that Tynwald should play in the budget process. Today we're meeting virtually with Deputy Ina Gardiner. Amongst her many roles, she serves as Chair of the Public Accounts Committee and President of the Scrutiny Liaison Committee in Jersey, and was previously Jersey's Minister for Children and Education. I would first like to thank Deputy Gardiner for agreeing to speak to the committee about the role that the Legislature plays in Jersey's budget process and the effectiveness of that process. Please ensure that any mobile phones are on silent or switched off so that they do not have any interruptions. For the purposes of Hansard, I will be ensuring that only one person is speaking at a time. So for the benefit of Hansard, perhaps Deputy Gardiner, you can introduce yourself, including your title and how long you've been in post.
Good morning and thank you for the invitation. I'm delighted to share Jersey experience with Isle of Man. Legislature, I'm Deputy Ina Gardiner. I'm President of the Scrutiny Liaison Committee and Chair of the Public Accounts Committee. It's my second term, but in current post I'm from February 24.
Lovely, thank you so much. If I could start, if you don't mind, we understand that in Jersey the budget is presented in the government plan, which spans several years, which is lodged, published, and circulated to members at least 6 weeks prior to the budget debate, and also obviously it's available to the public at that time. In your experience, does this 6-week lodging period give states, members and scrutiny panels sufficient time to properly scrutinise the budget?
First of all, you mentioned two names, name government plan and the budget. The government plan holds for 4 years, but we've gone back to very simple word, the budget, that it's clear for the public and for everyone that we are debating the budget. Another thing that we do have in our standing orders, actually lodging period for the budget is 12 weeks compared to the 6 weeks that any other government business needs to be lodged for the scrutiny. So it's in our standing order 264A, which you can read later, that State of Jersey sets a minimum lodging period of 12 weeks applicable for the government plan, except the year that we do have elections, and if we do have election year, it will be 10 weeks. It's the minimum. Last year we had it a bit more. This year we would have 12 weeks, and 12 weeks we do believe it's sufficient time to scrutinize the budget.
Okay, and so just for clarity then, the budget is also made public and available to all members 12 weeks in advance of the debate and the vote?
Correct. The budget proposition published 12 weeks minimum before the debate. It's available for the public and it's available for all members. It's published on the State's Assembly website. And from the moment that it's published, the scrutiny process, including various events engaging with the public and searching what public thinks of the lodged budget.
Okay, and that budget would also include any changes to taxation, either direct or indirect, as well as income and expenditure.
Absolutely. We have public finance law, and in the public finance law, paragraph 9, preparation and lodging of the government plan, the government must estimate income to be paid into the consolidated fund in the next financial year. The government must propose any transfers between any funds during the next financial year. For example, we did bring an amendment and it was debated because we felt like health insurance funds should be used for specific purposes that government suggested. One year amendment was successful, other year amendment was defeated, but it is an option to discuss any transfers between funds. If government decide to put taxes up, it will be in the budget proposition. If government decided to put extra stamp duty on various property, it will be in the budget debate. It also will be proposition what will have our fuel duty, alcohol duty, and everything included in the budget proposition.
Okay, I might come over to you, Mr. Watson, because when we were talking previously, you were talking about whether by prior publication there was any risk of tax planning.
Thanks, Chair. I was just wondering if the experience of Jersey was that people tried to sort of structure their affairs during that sort of 12-week period to try and avoid any increases in tax, or is that perhaps not a big issue if you've got quite a stable tax regime? Just if you could have any reflections on that.
I think it's really important to understand that the budget must to be balanced. Any amendment that would come from the scrutiny or any amendment that might come from the individual backbenchers. We are very lucky as the backbencher, we can bring our own amendments to the budget. We must present financial implications and to explain if we would like to increase or decrease income of particular line where the money needs to be taken from. And the discussion is it right or wrong move, and also discussion if the right budget was reallocated from the areas.
Thank you. That's perhaps something else we might want to pick up on later. But in terms of the population of Jersey, is there any evidence, perhaps from Treasury or from anywhere else, that if they see that the tax rate is proposed to increase in the budget, do they then try and arrange their affairs so that they pay more tax in the year when the tax is lower? Is there any sort of evidence of that?
We usually don't. Our tax system is pretty stable, and but there is a discussion that we might need to increase tax, but currently we need to change our tax system because our tax system is a bit more complex than other jurisdictions, as you know. So currently it's stable, and Treasurer can estimate what will be the income. If we decide to move to different tax regime, I assume we will have several debates prior and we will be ready to go with the budget with new tax regime.
Thank you. And Chair, if I might just ask one more, you mentioned also about financial implications for amendments.
Yes.
Who provides that assessment? Is that done by the Treasury of Jersey, or is that provided by the member?
It should be provided by the member or by the scrutiny panel, but each member in the scrutiny panel has, we are working with the officers, and officers need to put like a Chinese wall when they're working on amendments to advise us if it's right route or wrong route. As a member or as a scrutiny, we have our opinion, we can receive advice, and we can decide what we will do with this advice.
Thank you very much. I think you wanted to come in on this topic, Mr. Thomas.
Just a very short question. The Jersey system was the basis for the motion by Mrs. Christian on which this committee was set up, but she mentioned 8 weeks after a general election. Can you just clarify that there hasn't been a change, that it's 10 weeks that the budget is published before in the year after a general election, or has that changed recently?
It depends when our general elections, and this is why our general elections next year will be earlier, will be on the 7th of June, to allow more time to the new elected government to present their budget. 10 weeks it's for the scrutiny, so it should be launched 10 weeks before the debate. How long the new elected government would have to present the government plan, it will be depends on the date of the election.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much for answering those. Coming on on the idea of time and resources to review the budget, Are members provided with any resources or expert advice to help them understand and meaningfully engage with the budget, or do members generally seek their own advice?
First of all, before the budget would be launched, we would have presentation from the Treasury Minister, Treasurer, and their team. So we'll have private briefing where the members will be able to ask questions. Treasurer officers are available for the members for meeting and advice on different issues and options that would be rising. On top of this, at the Jersey State Assembly now, we didn't have it 4 years ago, we have what we call research team. We have officers. Currently we have, I think, 3 officers that work with the backbenchers and supporting backbenchers to bring their amendments to the budget. It will include doing the research, drafting the amendment, checking with the government, and if needed with the law department. So we do have support of specific team to prepare the amendments.
And these 3 members of staff, they're members of Parliament rather than departmental members or government members, is that right?
Yes, they're employed by the State's Grant. They are employed through the year. During the year when the backbenchers would like to draft their propositions, they're available for members' support. And obviously during the budget scrutiny and preparation to the budget debate, they're the main team and their main work only for the backbenchers. They are members of the State's Grant, not members of the government.
Okay, thank you. But there would be nothing to stop a member taking the budget to an economist or somebody expert in finance outside of government and outside of the Parliament to ask them for their advice and their scrutiny.
I mean, the members can seek advice. Obviously, it's public document.
Yeah.
It's nothing, it's not confidential document. And on any public information then available, members of the public, even economists, and we're talking about Jersey, that it's big finance center. Members of the public would contact members of the states and they will present their opinion. It's up to member if they decide to accept opinion from outside or not.
Thank you. Going on from that, can you talk us through how the committees scrutinise the government plan and the budget between its publication and debate? And do committees usually gather further evidence at this stage?
First of all, as Scrutiny Liaison Committee, we would decide which model we would take at the current year. Each scrutiny panel, we have 5 standing scrutiny panels, are involved and establish specific reviews. It does not include Public Accounts Committee. The Public Accounts Committee remit in Jersey is to scrutinize the annual reports and accounts, to scrutinize after presentation how the budget was spent.
Yeah.
Scrutiny of the budget going into the 5 standing panels, depending on their remit. Scrutiny Liaison Committee would decide which areas which panel will scrutinize. Scrutiny Liaison Committee in 2022 and 2021 set standalone government plan or budget plan review that representation from each panels were on that special government plan review panel. Each panel continued with their work, and what we call government review panel in 2022, because it was called government review, scrutinized cross suggestions, cross propositions. What we've done in 2024, we have a corporate services scrutiny review panel that scrutinized Chief Minister, Treasury Minister. This panel coordinated work between all other panels, and the panels needed to feed their findings and recommendation to the corporate panel. As a scrutiny liaison committee, we did hold a public hearing with the Chief Minister, Treasury Minister, and the Chief Executive of the state of Jersey to understand. So it was Chief Minister, Treasurer, and the Chief Executive to look into the cross themes which touching each panel. And I'll give you an example. For example, we gone into the introduction of the living wage. To introduce living wage, we needed to take funds, not to bring the funds into the health insurance fund and support businesses in the transition. So it did touch children and education and home affairs scrutiny panel. It did touch health and social security scrutiny panel. It did had a remit with corporate services, and it also had a remit with the economic development minister. The moment that remits of the panel are crossover, scrutiny liaison committee brought it to the public hearing. So what's really important, we do call ministers and officers to the public hearing specifically related to their propositions within their remits in the budget.
Okay. Again, without trying to put you on the spot, that sounds like quite a long process. Is the relationship between the government and the committees generally cooperative and productive during this period?
Yes, I think we have usually very cooperative, very open, because at the end of the day, scrutinizing propositions and can actually say, maybe we'll think different way. We're talking about the critical friends. Yes, I can see the question.
Yeah. Okay.
I was hoping the chair might bring me in, but as you've yielded the floor, I was just wondering, does it feel in the States does it feel like scrutiny, or does it feel like opposition, or can it depend on the personalities?
From my personal view, scrutiny is not an opposition. Scrutinizing and trying to improve what was proposed. I cannot tell that everything is going completely easy and friendly, because there are areas that we will disagree. What was also very interesting, we have very diverse panels. And as you can imagine, within the 5 members of the panels that are very diverse, there are various views on specific topics. The decision that was made at the scrutiny, and it did happen in 2024, when the members of the panel don't agree on specific issue. For example, government proposed a freeze on alcohol duty, not to increase, and some members of the panel agree with it, and some members of the panel thinking that the alcohol put in extra stress on the health services, and it's important, and the price is important. So the moment the panel didn't agree, so scrutiny didn't bring any amendment, because it was disagreement between the members, and the member who felt very strong about this particular issue brought personal amendment as a backbencher, and it has been debated. So it's really important to make sure that the panel coming to the agreement, and it is always an option for the individual member to bring an amendment if the panel felt they cannot come to a common vision on this particular issue.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Knish, I think you wanted to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question about the panels. Are they broadcast live, or are the findings and discussions of those panels published to the public?
Yes, all public hearing broadcast live, and also before any public hearing, if it's connected to the government, to the budget, or to any other public hearing, there is a call for the questions from the public. Sometimes, the public welcome to submit the questions, and 99% when question is sound and correct, the question will be asked by the scrutiny panel on behalf of the public. It will be mentioned during the public hearing. These are the questions from the public, and question will be asked. The transcript usually published between 2 to 4 days. So any member of the public can watch recorded public hearing and can also read the transcript.
Thank you.
And Mr. Thomas?
And just building on that, about the scrutiny panels and their composition, what proportion of the members of the states are in government? And how are those people treated regarding service on the scrutiny panel committees? And so that's it. So is government represented on, or the parties of the government members represented on the scrutiny panels? And how many people? What percentage of the states members can serve in scrutiny panels and do serve in government?
Okay. First of all, our composition, we have 49 members. From 49 members, 21 would be in the government, which leaves 28 members to be able to join any scrutiny. Now, we have only one party. Currently, we have actually two parties. We have 2 members of one party and 10 members of other party. From these parties, from Liberal Conservatives, I have 2 members, one of them in the government and one of them as a backbencher and in the scrutiny. Reform Party, we have 10 members, 4 in the government and 6 at scrutiny. Our executive members of the government will not serve on the scrutiny, but definitely we do have party members. We have 2 party members, reform members, who are chairs of the scrutiny. Because scrutiny doesn't act as an opposition, and scrutiny is independent, it should be independent, and objective review of the government propositions. When they're chairing the party politics shouldn't come into scrutiny. If they're not agreeing, they're bringing their own proposition as a party member, as an individual member. Does it answer your question?
Very, very clearly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And coming on to that now, I'd like to hand over to Mr. Ashford to explore how the amendment process works.
One of the interesting things that you've mentioned already today is about the scrutiny committees being able to bring amendments as well as individual members. Can I ask, how often is that done? So is it quite often that the scrutiny committees will bring their own amendments to the budget process? And how often are these amendments actually approved?
I think it really depends from year to year. It depends on the composition, but some amendments will be improved. Let's go first how the amendments would be lodged. When we have a proposition, the scrutiny or individual member amendment should be lodged 2 weeks in advance before the debate, 2 weeks before the debate. And government can lodge, government can lodge amendments as well, and it did happen. Follow the scrutiny, follow our engagement. Government decided they would lodge their own amendments on their proposed budget. A week amendment to amendment can be lodged as well. If I'm thinking about from 2021 after COVID until 2024 for budget debates, I think we did have between 20 to 30 amendments to each of the budgets. Some amendments will be accepted by the government and will not be debated. Personally, as a chair of the Public Accounts Committee, obviously Public Accounts Committee don't lodge amendments, and I personally, as a backbencher, lodged 3 amendments to the budget last year, and all 3 amendments were accepted. 2 amendments were accepted, and one I withdraw because Minister came with different proposition, and the outcome was the same, but the route was different. So, at the same time, the amendments that are not accepted before the debate are going to the assembly floor. and it really depends on the year, but scrutiny amendments would be supported and would not be supported. I cannot tell if it's 50-50 because it really depends on the year. But it does change the budget.
That's perfect. I just want to go back to something you said before, which quite intrigued me in answer to a question from Mr. Watterson, where you mentioned about it was in the members' hands to ensure that that any amendment they moved actually balanced. What happens in the event there's a disagreement where the member actually turns round and says, my amendment balances off, and the Treasury effectively says, no, it doesn't?
First of all, before the debate, Treasury would publish the comments, and everyone would need to present if it's balanced or not. It's usually you say, I would like to take money from this head of expenditure and move funds to this head of expenditure. And the debate is if this head of expenditure is more important what's the scrutiny panel or the backbencher propose, and if these funds should be spent in different head of expenditure or on different project as proposed by the amendment. So there is two levels. One level, what is the priority? And this is how legislature can decide if they priority this project or that project in the coming year, and it debated about the priority. And if funds that proposed, if the treasurer or the backbencher is correct with their estimates of the necessary funding for what is proposed.
So as long as the member actually certifies that they believe that it actually balances, then the amendment can go forward?
Yes.
Even if the Treasury disagrees with that balance?
Every party in their speech during debate needs to prove their point and convince the Assembly.
So in terms of the amendments, do you believe that the system works well, or have you identified any difficulties with the process?
I do believe the system works well. Obviously, it depends on the composition of the Assembly. It depends what's happening within the public. Sometimes public comment actually really gives big support for specific amendment because they feel it is really important issue and it's raised with the government. I do believe it's important that we as a legislature have an option to amend the proposed budget because we're all representing the public. Most of our assembly are independent, and we can make our case, and if assembly would support us, assembly would support, and government would need to deliver.
Okay, I think Mr. Thomas just wanted to come in on this point.
Well, no, because of the excellence and clarity of your answers so far, I just wanted to ask a very simple question. What is a proposition? You know, the amendments are in the form of proposition. We probably think we know what a proposition is. I believe a proposition is a 3 or 4 page explanation of an amendment motion that's going to be moved in the states of states. Is that correct? Is that what a proposition is?
Yes, to be honest, one of the most difficult amendments to do is the amendments for the budget, because how the budget is structured, it needs to be amended not only in one paragraph. It's usually they have different areas that needs to be amended as well. But this is why we have members' resource who already know what's the structure of the amendment that needs to look like. So I'm scrutiny panel, we have scrutiny officers who are already trained how to bring amendment to the budget. They know what needs to be included, but usually we are putting a word if to add paragraph or it's to change the wording. And after you have a report, sometimes report can be 1 page and sometimes report can be 3-4 pages and can be 10 pages. It really depends how complex the topic and amendment that the member or scrutiny will propose.
I was just wondering, are there any examples of Assembly amendments that have actually led to substantial changes in policy or funding priorities?
Yes, I mean, one of them that come into my mind, it's I can share with you later some bigger one because they're not in front of me. But for example, there was a proposition to use health insurance fund. Our health insurance fund, it's our funding for the primary health care. And was proposed to use funds from health insurance fund to fund new digital program which will improve health records, and it's kind of was connected, and the backbencher brought a proposition that government talked about millions not to take out from the health insurance fund and invest in IT system, which amendment won on the floor of the Assembly, and the government needs to find a way to fund IT project from other sources, from other options.
Okay.
Another example, we have Jersey Premium. It's children who receive extra funds, families who are on income support, or families who would be entitled to receive income support if they would be more than 5 years in Jersey. Families or residents who are less than 5 years in Jersey, they don't receive income support in Jersey. But we have a system which calls Jersey Premium that gives extra funds to children, to schools, to support children if their parents would be on income support or in income support. And this particular Jersey Premium hasn't increased for years and years and years in lines of inflation. So the amount of Jersey Premium supported children at school reduced substantially. And that was the government review scrutiny panel that examined cross-government issues, brought the amendment to increase in line with inflation, and the amendment was adopted.
Thank you. I'd like to pass on to Mr. Thomas now to ask about the relationship really between the budget and departmental planning.
Thank you, Chair. How closely are the departmental and other government body plans and strategies linked to the budget and the government plan, please?
First of all, the preparation of the budgets, departments are involved from early in the year. Approximately in March, April, if departments would like to increase their, but usually it's decrease the budget, they're preparing business plans that's submitted to the treasurer. And they need to specify where the gaps they identify in their departmental delivery according to the ministerial priorities. These business plans and requests for extra growth analyzed by the treasurer. Council of Ministers usually start to sit and discuss and have their workshops between them in June to be able to launch their budget end of August, beginning of September. So it's really intense work between departments and the ministers in preparation of the budget. And the final decisions, because it's always, we have obviously restricted funds, and the decision should be made. We have extra 20 million, for example, extra growth that we projected in 2025, for example, how this extra 20 millions will be, which business case, which department needs and more, which align with the common strategic policy priorities, where we see more deficit. And the discussion, it's open discussion through the workshops between the ministers to set up their priorities and to launch balanced budget by the end of August. But the process, it's between around 5 months process, started with the department, fed into the Council of Ministers, and finalized with the launch budget.
Thank you very much. And the second question is about how those departments implementing the budget and government plans are actually held accountable against the priorities and funding set out in the budget and the government plan. And I think I'm specifically interested in the role of the assistant ministers, who I assume are included in the 21 members of government in the states, the role of the 28 people who are not in government, and the scrutiny panels and other people or anybody else that I don't know about as yet who are involved in the scrutiny of the implementation of the departmental delivery.
It's a very good question. So first of all, during the budget year, for example, we approved the budget for 2025 in December. During the budget year, each scrutiny panel has a quarterly public hearing with the minister, where minister and their officials are questions about their implementation of their departmental plan, about their spending. And this is going through the budget year. In the middle of the year, we do have a publication of the half-year report where we can see how the budget and prediction, if it's overspent, it's going to be overspent or underspent, how the use of the budget and delivery of the departmental plans going through the year. The moment that the year finished, it's come to the Public Accounts Committee, and I launched the annual reports, annual accounts review just recently. We did have our first public hearing with the Chief Executive, and one of the questions we asked, we've seen several departments overspent above what was agreed by the State Assembly, and one of the questions we asked, we can see specific department, health department, they receive extra funding, 30-50 million every year on top, and somehow year by year they overspent almost 30 million. So we're talking about health department now that in 2022 had the set budget 226. In 2025 they have a budget of 329, and it looks like they're on the way to overspend again. And the question to the Chief Executive, because this is the officers and they're accountable officers, that he's the principal accounting officers, what are you doing? That it's illegal to overspend. We all know that it's illegal to overspend. And what's happening when your chief officer, specific department, year after year, overspending? How this officer hold accountable? Obviously, it will come to the minister, but at the end of the day, if officer is not happy how minister would like to spend the money, they need to ask for letter of instructions, and we didn't see any letter of instructions. So it's something that we're now looking into as Public Accounts Committee.
Thank you. I suppose the assistant minister role will be quite important for us to understand, because we have a system of departmental members. So you mentioned that the minister gives evidence with the chief executive. Are the assistant ministers as involved as the ministers in the budget scrutiny process?
Yes. For usually, unless something really happened, to a quarterly public hearing with the minister, assistant ministers, because we usually have two assistant ministers in each department. They would come with the minister to the public hearing. We also have I think most of the assistant ministers have clear delegation, and they have their areas of responsibilities. And when it will come to their delegated area of responsibility, scrutiny panel will question them. I can give you an example. For example, we have assistant chief minister with responsibilities for diversity and inclusion, and assistant chief minister would be questioned what's happening in that area. Or within children minister has also youth service. So assistant minister would be questioned specifically about the project and spending or overspending within youth service.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for describing that. I must admit, we have a slightly different system here in terms of a government plan, an Ireland plan, which is set out at the start of the administration and updated, but individual departmental plans which come in at different times of the year, and then a budget that comes in February. So it's interesting the way you try to amalgamate all of those together so that there's that common thread. But we also have very similar experience in terms of healthcare funding. And the question is always whether the healthcare is being underfunded or overspending. And we've had several recent debates on those lines. So I see that we're trying to battle with the same sort of problems, that often small island nations do have. I'd like to...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'd like to...
I would like to understand. I would like to understand. So your budget launched in February, and departmental plans not coming a month or 2 months after budget together?
No, at present, each departmental plan, their timetable to come in right over the next 12 months. In terms of the priorities and strategies of the individual departments and how those link in to the overall government plan. So that's been one of the issues that we've been trying to deal with, particularly in this committee, is how those could be more aligned, because certainly in the last budget, some members felt that there was a disconnect between the budget timing and the departmental plan timing, and how it all tied in to an overall island plan that could be accessible and understandable by the people of the island.
I think it's also difficult to understand for the public, but it's also very difficult to scrutinize. So the budget was approved in December, and departmental plans were published end of February.
Okay. Because
of different changes, they need to say, okay, this is the budget that we received. We have common strategic policy and we have ministerial priorities. How we are now allocating the budget that we receive according to the priorities. And it would be presented usually 2 months. We actually wanted it to be presented within a month as a scrutiny, but it was presented within 2 months. But at least from there, each scrutiny panel going into the departmental plans and questioning ministers on quarterly basis. There is something else that we started to do this last year, and this year we are doing more. For example, we had several scrutiny reports around gender pay gap, and it was part of the budget as well. And what happened, the scrutiny said, okay, we are setting standalone public hearing for an hour and a half, and we are calling everyone in, and just to understand where it is now and where is it going. And the same we did with the recruitment and retention. There were several reports, some of them from the Controller and Auditor General, some from the scrutiny. And because it was across all scrutiny and recruitment and retention, I'm sure that you also, it's one of the themes that come in the small jurisdictions. We all struggle to recruit and retain, especially in the House. So we brought together a panel, it was corporate services, and I was incorporated as chair of the Public Accounts Committee, and we questioned officials, chief minister, assistant chief minister, and officials about their recruitment and retention practices. So on top of quarterly public hearing that follow up departmental plans, we can pick up specific area within departmental plan and to create one-off public hearing to understand if it's a place to review or everything on track, to go a bit deeper than general public hearing.
Mrs. Knish, I think you wanted to ask about that.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to go back a little bit just about the departmental plans. Here, when we see departmental plans, they're very different in format. I just wondered whether the department plans that are presented to you are all in a standardised format.
They do have standardized format. Obviously, it can be some variation because, the children and education compared to health, they have different aspects. But general terms, it is in standardized format. Yeah, we can compare.
Thank you.
I mean, this year I think our Department of Health and Social Care tried to bring in the mandate and operational plan, the month after the budget for debate. So it was trying to make it a bit more contemporaneous. But there have been, I think, increasingly concerns about the budget and the ambitions of various departments to implement the government plan being slightly out of kilter, which brings me on to Mr. Speaker, Mr. Watson, talking about medium and long-term planning and how those fit in with the budget process.
But thank you. Just when the chair there was describing our system of dripping out the department plans over the course of the year, I think I'd like Deputy Gardiner's face to be entered into evidence there, because it's a bizarre way of doing it. And I think that sort of summed it up nicely. I'd like to move back from the scrutiny side back to the preparation of the government plan.
Yeah.
Is that the product primarily of the Council of Ministers? Is it the government team, or do all members of the states get engaged at some point in the preparation of that government plan?
The government plan, let's go the budget. The budget prepared by the Council of Ministers with officers' support. So the members of the states are not involved in preparation of the budget.
Okay. And the government plan, government sort of longer term objectives, taking into account that sustainable well-being and the proposals about how they're going to have that sustainable well-being be taken to the budget. Are members engaged in that element of it, as well as it notwithstanding the budget specifically?
We have in our public finance law that the Council of Ministers must, in preparing the government plan, take into account the sustainable well-being, including economic, social, environment, cultural well-being of the inhabitants of Jersey over successive generation, and be set out in the government plan how the proposals in the plan take that sustainable well-being into the account. We do have it already in the public finance law that was approved by the State Assembly. So during the preparation of the budget, between April when the business plans are business case are submitted, and Council of Ministers discussion, states members are not involved. It can be involved in an informal way. It can raise some questions. It can make some suggestions. Sometimes we had a proposition that brought just before the budget when would influence the budget. So sometimes as a state member, as a backbencher, thinking it's really important, I don't think government catching it, I would bring a proposition that must be included in the budget. Example, it was a proposition about support to agriculture and fisheries, special grants, and the request was around 6.7 million. So once it's passed, the Council of Ministers needed to find a way to have this head of expenditure included and obviously balance the budget from other means. About long-term planning, and it's interesting because we are still debating. Before 2019, we did have 4 years set budget, and it had some amendments, but it was very clear 4 years. What we have now since the public finance law in 2019, we're approving budget for the following year with 4 years forecast as the launch budget. So we do have 4 year forecast, but when we come the next year, the changes can be substantial. It is ongoing conversation from various reasons. If 3 years budget, we're talking about 3 years because it's always the year of the election, would help to manage expenditure. And it's coming, for example, from the school, because sometimes school can underspend and some cover can overspend. And if head teacher needs to plan for 3 years, it's much easier planning. The same coming from the third sector and charities. If charity know that they receive grant only for a year, they would struggle to recruit and commit for 2 years or 3 years employment. And if as a government or as a state we would like specific charity to deliver specific project, we need to ensure that they have sustainable funding and not year into year negotiation. And this is something that we are looking into. It will not happen this year, but it might happen in the future.
So, government's policy priorities in Isle of Man was the Island Plan that induced in the government plan. That is very much a product of the Council of Ministers and the government team, rather than the states as a whole. It might be approved by the states as a whole, but in terms of the preparation of it, that plan belongs, if you like, to the government. Is that?
Okay, I can see where is the confusion. Okay, we have two things. We have each government, which when elected, they need to present to the states their common strategic policy, where they're setting out their priority for duration of the government. Common strategic policy setting priorities, what they would deliver. Common strategic policy does not include numbers. Common strategic policy presented to the states, debated to the states, and can be amended by the backbenchers, and we did amend common strategic policy. Let's drop the word government plan, because government plan, it was a name for budget. They just created the name. Budget presented every year, and it's debated by the Council of Ministers. So they need to ensure that approved by the states, or amended and approved by the states, their common strategic policy, their government priority, mirrored in their budget, proposed budget. And budget again can be amended. Does it help?
Yes, that does. Thank you very much. And can you perhaps finally, you mentioned about the 3-year plan and how that goes forward. Firstly, does that 3-year plan cross over the election horizon? So in the year before an election, they're still required to produce a 3-year plan. And can you give us some indication as to how volatile those plans are?
They're very volatile. So currently what we have, even that we put 4 years plan, 1 for current year and 3 years projection, the new government would come in and will change this around. I remember when we were elected and I got into the ministerial position, and I stood on very specific priorities for education and for children, and I've been presented with the budget but basically cut 20%. I said, no. So, and it was started negotiation within the Council of Ministers, because we still have the same budget, we have the same amount of money that we can use, but how it will be divided between the departments and between ministerial portfolios, it will depend on the elected Council of Ministers.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'd like to hand over now to Mrs. Kinnish, really talking about something that has interested us as a Parliament, which is public engagement.
Thank you, Chair. We heard earlier that your budget is made public at the same time as it's circulated to members, whereas ours is kept confidential from the public up until the sitting at which it's debated. What impact would you say it's had on your budget process overall from that open engagement with the public, and has there been any challenges to that?
We are trying every time new options how we engage with the public, because it's really important to hear from the public. First of all, we ask to government to present, because the budget is really, really complex and big documents. People from the finance industry probably can read it, but the public on the street, not always. So they're presenting type of executive summary, but more digital version that it's easier to understand what are the priorities, what are the main changes, what are the main spendings. The moment that review launched on all social media, we're asking public to submit their views, and they can submit it in writing or over social media. Next thing that we started to do a couple years ago, we're creating our stands, and we are going on the high street. We have the full budget, we have a light version of the budget. We have QR codes, and we standing on the high street as members of the scrutiny and public person, and they're sharing with us views. They're trying to look into this. They're answering the question. We have very easy questionnaires, basically trying to understand public views on proposed changes. If it's really bad weather, we are going to we have stands in the big supermarkets when people finish their shopping or they would like to engage, and people do engage. And they actually say, "Oh, budget! I didn't know the budget. I'll take with me, and I will submit later." And we receive later submission. I cannot tell that we have more and more public engagement and public views on the budget, but it's still in early stages. We're trying our best, and it's important to hear from the public. And actually, some of the amendments we did have several hundreds views of the public on specific area of the budget, and it can support. Again, it's not thousand, it's not statistically sealed, but this is feeling that we can bring into the assembly what public told us.
Would you say then that the public engagement that you're doing, that people are feeling listened to and that they feel that they're contributing to that process?
It is important, and I can see how more and more public started to engage. Again, as Jersey, we have the lowest public engagement. And people do feel that they're listened to. Some people stop and maybe will not talk about the specific budget, but they will raise with us issues which are important for them. And maybe they cannot connect it to this head of expenditure in very dry budget, but listening to the public and understanding what exactly worry them, we can connect it to the head of expenditure to translate it into the dry document which calls budget.
Thank you. We got the benefit of looking at your youth-friendly version of the budget.
Yes.
And it's often quite difficult to engage with the younger demographics. Would you say that that's an effective way of engaging with the youth and they understand that process?
We are at the beginning of our journey. The youth-friendly version, we just recently, a couple of years that we started to publish, and we started to go more into schools. We have more engagement with schools, and schools started to invite us more. Because at the end of the day, when the children turn 16, the young people turn 16, they're eligible to vote. And political education, political engagement, that when they're going out and know who they're voting for, or at least what they would like to see and how to read the manifesto, it's important. Unfortunately, we found that young people usually don't know who is their district deputy, even though the district deputy is knocking on the doors, and we need to improve it.
So can I just ask, when you're capturing the data from people, whether that's young people or any member of public, do you at the same time capture those demographics so that you can understand those demographics as to who's contributing?
Absolutely. I can ask officers to share like a questionnaire that we prepared, very easy questionnaire, yes, no, on 2 A4 pages for the previous budget. And we ask just to tick the box about demographics to understand and actually through most of our scrutiny reviews, not necessarily the budget. Recently I finished review of handling and learning from complaints. It was very interesting to see the responses from the older demographics and younger demographics, how they see complaint system work or doesn't work within the state. We did see the differences in the answers.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. It's interesting you talk about trying to engage the public more, because I think it was this week that Ireland Global Research have published their opinion polls for looking at people in Jersey, Guernsey and the Isle of Man, and there did seem to be very much the feeling from the general public that people weren't engaged, weren't able to change things, and therefore there was a degree of lack of trust and a lack of confidence in both politicians and Parliament and government, and obviously that's a challenge for all of us in politics.
No, absolutely, I agree with it, and this is something that we are all facing, and this is why we are trying to find a way to engage. How successful we'll be with the change we'll see probably in the next elections, if the rate of the people who come out and vote will increase. It's very, very difficult, but one of the things that came out in handling and learning from complaints review, like you said, people said, what's the point to complain? I cannot change anything. And we don't have public ombudsman yet. And it's ongoing discussion, would we need independent public ombudsman? Would it raise public confidence in the states? It's something that we would need to progress. It was a state decision, but we still didn't progress, and people raised it during the review. I think we can do as much as we can, and this is really important. It's our day-to-day behavior as a politicians. It's the manifestos that we are standing on and we are delivering. And if we're changing the mind, because the mind can be changed, we need to explain to the public what evidence was presented in front of us. It's really important to have this open and transparent conversation with the electorate. It's not easy. But we need I'm continue to do this, and I believe in it, and the transparency was an important part to share with the public what we're actually doing. I don't think that I have much to hide. The more we share, the more public can read. It's important.
Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Chair. I think the Jersey turnout in elections is even lower than it is in the Isle of Man. It seems like 44% on average, and the amount of registered voters as a proportion of the population is even lower than in the Isle of Man. So it's very interesting to challenge. Well, I want to challenge you about whether there's real participation, given that people don't seem to vote in huge numbers in Jersey. So perhaps my contention and my proposition to you is that people are more interested in the budget than they are actually in voting. So a very specific question then is, who engages in the 12 weeks when the budget is published? Is it interest groups, pensioners, people who grow agricultural products, people who are thinking about their retirement in terms of health needs, or is it the average person in St Helier?
I think you hit nail on the head. That obviously we always have representation from the interest groups. We always would have representations from all elder population and pensioners that involve. We do have representations from the finance industry. The St Helier, it's interesting part because we do have a third of the population of Jersey lives in St Helier, but also it's the highest population from people to work in St Helier. And how we engage with them and how we're bringing them into Jersey society, it's a question. In St Helier, the voters are less compared to the population, compared to the country parishes. And again, you have more immigrants in St Helier compared to the country parishes. We established now, we have standalone panel, political education and engagement, because we recognize that some people don't vote because they don't know their rights, that after 2 years living in Jersey, you're allowed to vote. We didn't have, we had paper registration to vote. And if people arrived to Jersey and didn't know after 2 years that they need to sign a paper and send it back to the parish hall, they came to vote, and it was a situation people came to the polling station and they were not registered. I really hope that we will introduce electronic registration. We should introduce this year. During the budget, if we are on the street, I can see very diverse people engage with us because we are there. We are standing there, it's very clear, States Assembly, it's a budget debate, and people see us on the street and you have more engagement, and we hope it will continue. To tell that it will be magic, it will not. The public trust in politicians generally around the world is pretty low.
Thank you.
Mr. Ashford?
It's just following on from the very interesting point that Mr. Thomas has just raised. From between the budget being published and then eventually getting to the debate, do you see intense lobbying of individual members from, for instance, pressure groups, such as, for instance, the Chamber of Commerce and so on, for particular policies? And how is that actually managed?
Actually, we have, I think, intense lobbying from all interest groups through the year. I cannot see the big difference between budget and not budget, because the budget would come very quickly and you have the same propositions different propositions coming through the year. So engagement with Chamber of Commerce, it's ongoing on various issues, and actually they have very strong representation to the Public Accounts Committee and even came to the Public Accounts Committee for the public hearing on recruitment, on procurement. We had the procurement review and we had engagement. So it's interesting that you're asking about how you're managing and working with the lobbying group, because last scrutiny liaison committee, we put it on the agenda because all chairs felt we do have intense engagement with lobbying group. They bring valid points, and we started to look how we need to set up different framework engaging with the lobbying group when we recognize lobbying group. And it will be a conversation. We'll continue to talk about it and looking into this during our next scrutiny liaison committee meeting. I cannot see that we have more during the budget than through the year.
And Mr. Thomas?
I'm moving away from public engagement. Is that all right, Chair? I've just got. It's just about the timetable. I just want to make sure I understand, and our evidence is therefore clear. The timetable for the budget in Jersey. So. In the Isle of Man, our financial year starts on the 1st of April, and we have our budget in February, and we begin in June. I think in Jersey the financial year starts on the 1st of January, and you have your budget in December, and I think you said that your departmental plans weren't agreed until February. So I'm just asking if that's my understanding is correct. What happens in January and February? Are the departments just spending without a plan that's been approved, or what happens if my understanding is correct in those months?
Your understanding is correct, and there were different plans before. It's the first year that was published really in February, but the budget approved. The department does have budget, and most of the budget, it's the stuff they're doing anyway, unless you have special extra growth. So they do continue to work business as usual, as they would adjust to different areas, because they did have their operational plan. They couldn't propose the budget. They couldn't agree the budget that was proposed before. When the budget was launched, they more or less know what their budget for the next year. It might be some amendments and changes during the budget debate that needs to have some adjustment during January, but it doesn't change major but a head of expenditure that would be allocated to the specific department. They just need to present in February how changes would affect. But day-to-day business continue. It's business as usual at most of the departments from one year to other year. You have schools, you know what's the school's budget, and it will not, it might increase, but it will continue.
Thank you. That's very clear.
Thank you very much. If I can, I'll ask a question personally. Having been both a minister and chair of the Public Accounts Committee, do you feel that the Jersey budget process strikes the right balance between executive control and accountability and parliamentary scrutiny?
Very good question. Thank you for your question. What I believe that we need to do more. So I think that we do have a very clear process, and it does work. As a minister, compared to what you presented, I'm fully involved with the budget, and I need to have negotiations with if I'm a member of the Council of Ministers, with other members of the Council of Ministers to ensure that we have a balance and priorities between the department and as a Council of Ministers as a whole. It's always compromises. What I feel doesn't work well, it's the forecasting. So if you have a department that year after year overspending 10% of their or less of their budget, I don't think it's right. Or we're checking if it's structural deficit or it's other deficit, but it's impossible if department spent 303 million, for example, year before, and the budget gives them 286 for the next year. It's unrealistic to think that it will be saved with increase of inflation and cost of living and everything, that the department will spend less than they spent the year before. So we need to be realistic when we agreed the budget. And this is where I feel we need to ensure that proper forecasting is put in place. Sometimes it feels that the forecasting is very optimistic. I feel that the numbers needs to be more down to the ground. If department spent X at the previous year, and they might do some savings, but they will not do savings. And we do put the department from the beginning into the deficit. And again, we talked about health, and this is public hearing that was last week or 2 weeks ago with the chief executive. And when I ask why health overspent, we didn't have enough beds. We had beds blocker in during the winter, and this is what we didn't forecast, and this is why we already by the Q1 knew that we will overspend. And when asked what happened this year, and this year happened exactly the same. We know what will happen in January, we know what will happen in February, and I do believe that in preparation of the government, of the budget, annual reports and accounts. Look what's happened in our reports and accounts. Our annual reports and accounts published beginning of May. It's very clear picture how funds were spent by the departments and where are the stress. And budget needs to be presented, needs to be connected to the previous annual reports and accounts, and not to be disconnected and thinking, something would happen and we will spend less. And this, I feel, this disconnect between annual reports and accounts and proposed budget that I think we still have, and we raised it with the Public Accounts Committee, and we actually raised it with the Treasurer, how the preparation of the accounts feed into the preparation of the budget.
Yeah. I mean, you talked about the way that departments just carry on one year after another year doing roughly the same thing. And obviously also highlighted the issues with healthcare spending. Has there been any attempt to bring in priority-based budgeting and challenge this year-on-year constant spending and constant increase in departmental expenditure?
Absolutely, and we're challenging it, and we'll continue to challenge, and we are going to through this annual reports and accounts, we would like to understand in details where was increase and where the increase could be predicted, and where it was structure or where it was not efficiency. Something else that we picked up and we will go to explore more through the Public Accounts Committee, and as I'm talking as the chair of the Public Accounts Committee, it's about how you increase productivity, how you start to think that you need to work in different way. And one of the questions that were asked by the Public Accounts Committee, we know that the cost of the tertiary care increased, and we connected to the UK. But we have France next door. Are we going to look into some health facilities in France with cheaper and it's next door compared to the UK? Would we start to look to deliver our health in different way? How we are going to implement medtech, where we are putting extra investment and changing ways of working to bring the efficiencies into the health service. Is it possible or not? It doesn't feel there is new way of thinking, how we can deliver differently, and this, I think, the next step that the government promised us to take.
Thank you. I mean, if looking at the budget process, you've highlighted a couple of things that you're working towards. If you were to redesign the budget process, are there any specific reforms you'd make to enhance scrutiny, transparency, or that sort of effectiveness of the overall process?
I think that, as I mentioned, the budget should be connected to previous year spending.
Yep.
Second thing, personally, what I wish to have is to have, obviously election year, it's election year, but after election year for the next 3 years of the government, to have a clear 3 years budget, which can be amended here and there, but to ensure that we have long-term delivery, that the departments and our partners can plan for these 3 years. About the scrutiny, what we are going to look into this year, and we'll try to change and see how does it work. We have Common Strategic Policy Scrutiny Review Panel, which was set when we examined Common Strategic Policy. And now, when the budget would be launched, we will discuss with this Scrutiny Liaison Committee if items within the Common Strategic Policy, which will touch through different departments, would be examined by Common Strategic Policy Scrutiny Review Panel separately. So each panel will examine their own areas, but whatever is part of the Common Strategic Policy, they have 13 priorities, would be examined by specifically set panel.
Thank you. Obviously, we've last week had feedback from our political members, our members of Parliament, in terms of the budget process, and it was quite diverse in terms of people's feelings. What's the most common jurisdiction about Jersey's budget process? Are they happy with it?
I think when we look around, we're pretty happy. It's always place to improvement, but we are happy that we can influence the budget. That when we can represent views of the islanders in different way, whatever we experience and whatever we feel it's right. So we do have this opportunity to influence the budget and spending and outcomes. For me, it's not just spending, it's about the outcomes to the public. What public would receive when extra X millions will be spent? And public does need to see these outcomes. We can put law documents, but if public can see that, for example, free children GP visits came as an amendment to the budget, and public could see very clear outcomes that now children under 18 receive free visit to GPs. Mm-hmm. And without us as a backbenchers being able to bring these amendments to the budget, it's likely would not happen.
But as that amendment or that proposal or proposition, that individual backbencher would have to show where that money came from to cover that theoretically loss of income to the health department.
Yeah, absolutely. It's coming from Health Insurance Fund, and they need to make sure what's coming in. So it is complex. I'm not saying that it's easy, but it's possible. And I think the most important, we as a parliament trying our best, because we as a legislature, we represent people. It's the legislature who set the budget. The government proposing the budget, the government needs to deliver the budget agreed by the states, by the legislature. So I do believe that we as a members of the parliament needs to have our say what will be in the budget and what will be delivered, and not just sign it off.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing that trying to get the balance of power between the government and the parliament across the world, really, particularly in certain countries, trying to get that balance. Thank you so much for your time. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask us?
What is your next steps? What is your process?
Oh, very, very good question. I mean, part of the reason this committee was formed was I think from a feeling amongst members that we could do better, that what we should be doing is looking at other jurisdictions, particularly island jurisdictions, particularly those without a very firmly established party system, and seeing how we could engage members more on behalf of their constituents to get better feed into the budget to begin with, but also so that we have the right scrutiny, understanding of the budget, and the ability for individual members to play a part in it to get those outcomes that you're talking about, which is basically why we're here in the first place, is to get outcomes for the people of our nations. So what we're trying to do is coalesce a very diverse range of different views amongst our 24 elected members and obviously the members of the Legislative Council, to see how we can constantly evolve our system and improve it, both in terms of scrutiny but also participation. But we haven't come up with a definite model yet. So looking at other jurisdictions, nobody else has. So we are hopefully on our way to make things better.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're saying that we are, like yourself, we are not party. We don't have party politics. We do have a couple of parties, but it's mainly independent. Yeah. And it's very different when you have parties with very clear manifesto and mandate. And so, if I understood correct, you don't have any influence. If you are not member of the government, you don't have any influence on the budget apart from vote for or against.
Yeah, it is an all or nothing vote at the end, on the day that it's presented. Treasury, I think in the past have tried to get people participating, but more in terms of priorities rather than the key the meat in the budget, but that will inevitably increase. And I think the scrutiny and people wanting to have more input, more influence throughout the year, rather than just at budget time, will happen and will happen more. We have various scrutiny committees. I think in the past they've been looking more at departmental plans, certain priorities, rather than the overall budget as you're talking about. And perhaps that's something we need to look at, to do in tandem with what's happening through this committee.
Thank you. And if anything that would be helpful that we will share, I will ask officers to share, if it's standing orders, if it's an extract from the public finance law, if it's samples of our questionnaires and amendments, I'm more than happy to share. And we'll see what you're coming. Maybe we'll also get something from your new structure that will be proposed, because it's always learning. We always can improve everything.
Absolutely.
Always.
Thanks so much.
If was there any other questions that any of the members have, Mr. Speaker? No. I think you're absolutely right, Deputy Gardiner, that we are always trying to do better. We're always trying to learn, both internally but also from other people and other jurisdictions. So I'd just like to thank you on behalf of the committee for the time this morning in sharing your experiences in a very open and honest way, because all of us are struggling with similar issues, but hopefully we can learn from each other to deliver those outcomes for our nations that we're all desperate to deliver.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, the committee will finish this session and go to have a discussion privately.